The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds of light floated between the pillars. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a single platform in the center. Representatives from 300 species filled those seats, their eyes all pointing down at the lone human woman standing below. Ambassador Yuna Kim kept her back straight. She had practiced this speech for weeks. Every word was chosen with care. Every pause was planned. She spoke not just for herself, but for 12 billion humans spread across Earth and its struggling colonies. Honored members of the Council, she said, her voice calm and clear. I come before you today to request emergency aid for the outer colonies of human space. For 3 years, our people on Kepler Station and New Busan have faced severe shortages. Medicine, food, basic fuel for heating. Children are dying. She paused. The chamber was silent, but not with sympathy. She could feel their boredom like a cold wind. We have followed every rule, Yuna continued. We signed the Technology Limitation Treaty. We accepted the trade restrictions. We pay our dues to the Compact on time every cycle. We have done everything asked of us for 30 years. We only ask that the Council honor its promise to support member species in times of crisis. High Arbiter Thalos sat on his floating throne above the chamber. His skin was pale blue, and his 4 eyes blinked slowly, one pair at a time. He had led the Council for 2 centuries. He had seen species rise and fall. Humans, to him, were barely worth noticing. Ambassador Kim, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. Your request has been heard. However, the resource allocation for this cycle has already been decided. Perhaps next cycle, your petition will receive consideration. Next cycle is 14 months away, Yuna said. Our people cannot wait that long. Then perhaps a new voice cut in. Your people should learn to manage their resources better. The speaker was Ambassador Vren of the Kathrani Empire. He was tall and covered in dark green scales. His species had been a galactic power for 10,000 years. They viewed humans the way humans might view insects. Vren stood from his seat, and a cruel smile spread across his face. It is always the same with young species. They expand too fast. They breed without thought. Then they come crawling to their betters, begging for scraps. Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Yuna felt her face grow hot, but she kept her expression calm. We are not begging, she said. We are requesting what we are owed under the Mutual Aid Compact. Owed. Vren laughed louder now. You are owed nothing. You are permitted to join this council as a gesture of charity. Your species has contributed nothing of value. Your technology is primitive. Your culture is barely 1,000 years old. You should be grateful we allow you to sit at this table at all, or laughter. This time, it came from all directions. Yuna looked around the chamber. Species she had worked with. Species humanity had helped during the Vorthan Plague 10 years ago. None of them spoke up. None of them met her eyes. Vren was not finished. He walked down from his seat, moving closer to the center platform. Perhaps if humans spent less time breeding like vermin and more time evolving, they would not need to crawl before their betters. He spread his arms wide, inviting the crowd's approval. But what can we expect from a species that still measures its history in mere centuries? The chamber erupted. Laughter, clicking sounds, strange whistles that served as mockery for other species. The sound surrounded Yuna like a wave. She stood alone on that platform, the representative of all humanity. And she was being laughed at by the entire galaxy. High Arbiter Thalos did nothing. He watched with his 4 cold eyes and said nothing to stop it. Yuna looked at Vren. He stood only 10 meters away, his smile wide and confident. He expected her to bow, to apologize, to accept the insult as every young species had done before. Instead, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but the chamber's systems carried it to every ear. The council will remember this day. The laughter faded. Vren tilted his head, confused by her tone. There was no fear in her voice, no shame. Just cold, absolute certainty. Yuna turned and walked out. She did not bow. She did not ask permission. She simply left, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Vren shouted after her. Running away? Typical human cowardice. She did not look back. 1 hour later, Yuna sat in her private shuttle, watching Nexus Station shrink in the window. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. 30 years. 30 years of patience, of following rules, of swallowing pride. And this was how the galaxy repaid them. She opened a secure channel. The face that appeared on her screen was old and weathered, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Admiral Park," she said, "it's time." Admiral Tejo Park looked at her for a long moment. "What happened?" "They laughed at us, Admiral. In front of everyone. They called us vermin." Aho closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had changed. The tiredness was gone. In its place was something harder. "I'll contact Geneva," he said. "The Council has made their choice. Now we make ours." The channel closed. Yuna leaned back in her seat and looked at the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, 12 billion humans were waiting. They had been patient. They had been peaceful. They had played by every rule the galaxy had given them, no more. That night, the broadcast of the Council session reached Earth. Billions watched Ambassador Vren mock their representative. They watched the chamber laugh. They watched their ambassador stand alone while the galaxy treated humanity like dirt beneath their feet. The streets went quiet. Then they went angry. In homes, in offices, in military bases across the planet. A single thought spread like fire. Enough. Humanity had tried to earn the galaxy's respect. Now they would take it. The underground command center beneath Geneva was built to survive the end of the world. Its walls were 3 meters thick. Its power came from reactors buried even deeper. For 40 years it had waited in silence, preparing for a day that most hoped would never come. Now that day had arrived. Admiral Tejo Park stood at the head of a long table. Around him sat the 12 leaders of Earth's unified government. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, all of them watching him with tired eyes. They had seen the broadcast. They had heard the laughter. "We have 2 choices," Tejo said. His voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. "We can accept the insult. We can send another ambassador. We can apologize and beg for the scraps they might throw us." He paused. "Or we can show them who we really are." President Hyun Soo-moon of Korea spoke first. "If we act against the Council, we risk everything. Our trade routes. Our colonies. They could blockade us, starve us out." "With respect," President Moon Tae-ho replied, "they are already starving us. Our colonies have been dying for 3 years while we followed their rules. What more can they take?" Silence filled the room. General Wu Li stood and walked to a screen on the wall. He was younger than Tae-ho, but his eyes carried the same weight. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "Protocol Severance," he said. The screen lit up with maps, numbers, ship positions. "We developed this plan 15 years ago. We always knew the galaxy would never accept us as equals. They see us as children at best, animals at worst. So we prepared." He touched the screen, and a new image appeared. A shipyard hidden inside an asteroid field. "For 30 years we have publicly followed every technology restriction the Council placed on us. We built slow ships. We used approved weapons. We kept our military small and weak." Woojin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Publicly." The screen changed again. It showed fleet after fleet of ships, designs no one outside Earth had ever seen. "In secret, we have built over 4,000 warships. Our fastest vessels travel at speeds the Council thinks are impossible. Our weapons bypass standard galactic shields." He looked around the table. "We are not weak. We have never been weak. We were waiting." The room was silent. Then Minister Yoon Kong of Defense spoke. "You are suggesting we go to war with the entire galaxy?" "No," Admiral Tae-ho said. "We are suggesting we stop pretending to be less than we are. We do not need to fire a single shot. We simply need to show them what firing at us would cost." President Moon looked at the faces around the table. He saw fear, yes. But he also saw something else. Pride, anger, a determination that had been buried for decades. "Vote," he said, one by one. Every hand rose. 2 days later, the Galactic Council received a message from Earth. It was short. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language known to the galaxy, effective immediately. The United Earth government terminates all treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council and its member states. All galactic vessels are ordered to leave human space within 72 hours. Any vessel remaining after this deadline will be considered hostile. There will be no further communication on this matter. The message ended. Then Earth went silent. On Nexus Station, High Arbiter, Thalos read the message 3 times. He could not understand it. A species with 12 colony ships and a handful of patrol vessels was threatening the Galactic Council. It was absurd. They are bluffing, Ambassador Vren declared. Humans are emotional creatures. This is a tantrum, nothing more. In a month, when their food runs out, they will come crawling back. Overseer Malix, the fat, slug-like creature who controlled the trade compact, laughed his wet laugh. Let them suffer. Cut off all trade. No fuel, no medicine, no food imports. They will learn their place soon enough. But not everyone was so confident. In the back of the chamber, a small ambassador from a minor species watched with worried eyes. She had dealt with humans before. She had seen something in them that the great powers had missed. Patience was not weakness. Silence was not surrender. Something was coming. On Earth. Dr. Hannah Choi stood in the control room of Lunar Base 7. She was 53 years old and had spent 30 of those years working on Project Blackout. Officially, the project did not exist. Unofficially, it was humanity's last hope. Power systems online, a technician reported. All shipyards reporting ready. Hannah nodded. Through the window, she could see the dark side of the moon stretching out before her. Buried beneath that gray surface were construction facilities that had been running for decades. Ships that the galaxy did not know existed. Weapons that broke every council law. Her communicator buzzed. It was Admiral Tejo. Dr. Choi, is everything ready? Yes, Admiral. 4,217 vessels, fully armed and operational. We can launch within 6 hours. Good, maintain position. We will not fire first. But when they come in, they will come, we will be ready. Hannah ended the call and looked at her reflection in the dark window. 30 years of secrecy. 30 years of hiding their true strength behind a mask of weakness. Now the mask was coming off, in the orbital shipyard above Earth. Captain Sunko Beek walked through the corridors of the Hansunyong. It was the flagship of Earth's hidden fleet, half a kilometer long. Armed with weapons that could crack a planet, it was faster than anything the Council had ever built. His crew looked at him as he passed. Young faces, nervous faces. They had trained for years, but none of them had ever faced real combat. Captain, his first officer asked, "Is this really happening? Are we going to war?" Songho stopped and looked at her. Lieutenant Jian Ha was 28 years old. She had joined the fleet to protect humanity, not to start a war. "I don't know if it's war," Sunjo said honestly. "But I know this. For 30 years, we have smiled while they spat on us. We have bowed while they laughed. That ends now." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens next, we face it together as equals. That is all we have ever wanted." Gian nodded slowly. "Yes, Captain." Sunho continued to the bridge. Through the main viewport, he could see Earth hanging in the blackness of space. Blue and green and white, so small against the infinite dark. But soon, the galaxy would learn an important truth. Small did not mean weak, and patient did not mean afraid. The silence was not surrender. It was the calm before the storm. 2 weeks passed. The galaxy waited. Earth remained silent. On Nexus Station, the Council grew impatient. Trade routes were disrupted. Other species were asking questions. Some were even showing sympathy for the humans, dangerous development that could not be allowed. Ambassador Vrin demanded action. "We cannot let this insult stand," he declared before the Council. "Humanity must be taught their place. I propose we send a diplomatic fleet to their border. 50 warships. Enough to remind them of their weakness." By Arbiter, Thalos hesitated. Something about Earth's silence troubled him. but the pressure from the major powers was too great. "Very well," he said, "but this is a diplomatic mission. You will demand their surrender and the arrest of their ambassador for insulting the council. No weapons, unless necessary." Vren smiled his cold smile. "Of course, Arbiter. Diplomacy first." Everyone knew it was a lie. 7 days later, 50 Kathrani warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. They were massive vessels, each one a kilometer long, covered in weapons that had crushed 100 rebellions across galactic history. The Kathrani had never lost a war. They did not expect to start now. Ambassador Vren stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the empty space ahead. "Scan for human vessels," he ordered. "Scanning," the sensor officer reported. A moment later, his voice changed. "Contact. 13 vessels, holding position at coordinates 4-7-Mark II. 13. Vren laughed. "They send 13 ships against 50. Humanity is even more foolish than I thought." Open a channel, screen flickered, and a human face appeared. Captain Sun Jobeek sat calmly in his command chair, hands folded in his lap. Behind him, the bridge of the Hanzong hummed with quiet activity. "Kathrani Fleet," Sung Ho said. "You have entered human space without permission. You have 72 hours to withdraw. This is your only warning." Vren leaned forward, his eyes burning with contempt. "Human, you are in no position to give warnings. I am here on behalf of the Galactic Council. You will surrender your fleet, and you will hand over the criminal Unikim for trial. Refuse, and we will destroy you." Sung Ho did not blink. "We refuse. Then you choose death." Vren cut the channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Target the lead human vessel. Fire." The Kathrani flagship unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. The shots crossed the void in seconds, streaking toward the Hanxiang, with enough power to vaporize any ship in the Council's fleet. The shots missed. The Hanxiang was no longer there. It had moved faster than anything Vren had ever seen, appearing suddenly 200 kilometers to the left. What Vren started? Then the humans fired back. Beams of white light cut through space. They struck the Kathrani ships not on their hulls, but inside them. The weapons passed through shields as if they did not exist. In seconds, 3 Kathrani vessels lost power, their systems dead, their crews floating in darkness. "Impossible." The weapons officers screamed. "They bypassed our shields completely." "All ships attack formation," Vren shouted. "Destroy them." The 50 Kathrani warships opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, missiles, kinetic rounds, wall of death flying toward 13 human vessels. The humans danced through it. The Hanxiang, its sister ships, moved with impossible speed, sliding between attacks, appearing and disappearing as if they were ghosts. And every time they fired, another Kathrani ship went dark. On the bridge of the Hanxiang, Lieutenant Jion Ha reported with calm precision. "Enemy vessels 14 through 18 disabled. No casualties on our side." Captain Sung Ho Beek watched the battle on his screen. It was not a fight. It was a demonstration. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All galactic frequencies. Make sure everyone sees this." The channel opened. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched as the mighty Kathrani fleet crumbled. He announced. "To all species watching, what you are seeing is not a trick. For 30 years, humanity followed your rules. We built slow ships because you told us to. We used weak weapons because you demanded it. We accepted your insults because we hoped you would one day see us as equals. On the screen, another Kathrani ship went dark. You did not. Instead, you laughed at us. You called us vermin. You let our children die while you debated whether we deserved help." Sung Ho's voice hardened. "So we stopped waiting for your approval. We built what we needed to survive. Ships faster than anything in your fleets. Weapons your shields cannot stop. And a fleet of over 4,000 vessels, hidden across human space. The battle was ending. Of 50 Kathrani warships, 43 were now drifting without power. The remaining 7 were retreating at full speed. We do not want war," Sung Ho continued. We never wanted war. But we will not be slaves. We will not beg, and we will not allow anyone to harm our people again. Humanity sought peace. You offered contempt. Now witness what we built while you laughed," ended the broadcast. On Nexus Station, High Arbiter Thalos watched the footage in stunned silence. The most powerful fleet in the Kathrani Empire destroyed in 11 minutes by 13 human ships. His hands trembled. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "They were never weak," he whispered. "They were waiting." The Ambassador Vren's escape pod was recovered 3 hours later. He was alive, but broken. He had watched his fleet fall apart around him. He had seen the impossible become real. On Earth, Admiral Taeho Park received Captain Sung-ho Beek's report. "0 casualties," Sung-ho said. "All enemy vessels disabled but not destroyed. Their crews are alive. We have offered to return them to Council space." Taeho nodded slowly. "Well done, Captain. The galaxy is watching. They need to see that we are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are simply people who refuse to kneel." "What happens now, Admiral?" Taeho looked out the window of his office, toward the stars. "Now we show them a different path. We spent 30 years being what they wanted us to be. Now we become what we were always meant to be." Dr. Hannah Choi watched the broadcast from her lab on the moon. Around her, technicians and scientists were cheering, hugging, crying. A young engineer turned to her. "We did it, Doctor. We really did it." Hannah smiled, but her eyes were thoughtful. "We won a battle. The war for respect. The real war is just beginning." Across the galaxy, species that had mocked humanity fell silent. Species that had been oppressed by the great powers began to whisper among themselves. If humans could stand up to the Council, perhaps they were not alone after all. Perhaps there was hope. Panic spread across the galaxy like a disease. The news of the Kathrani defeat traveled faster than any ship. On 1,000 worlds, leaders watched the footage again and again. 50 warships, the pride of one of the galaxy's oldest empires. Reduced to floating wreckage by 13 human vessels, everything they believed about humanity was wrong. On Nexus Station, the Council chambers erupted into chaos. Species that had laughed at Ambassador Yuna Kim now screamed at each other, demanding answers, demanding action. Overseer Malix crawled to the center of the chamber, his fat body shaking with fear. "We must restore trade with Earth immediately," he begged. "If they block the hyperlanes, our entire economy will collapse. We must negotiate." Negotiate. Ambassador Vrenwat was left of him, shouted from his seat. His scales were cracked, his pride shattered. "They humiliated us. We must gather every fleet in the galaxy and crush them." "With what?" Someone shouted back. "You saw what they did. Our weapons cannot touch them." "High Arbiter?" Thalos raised his hand. Slowly, the chamber fell silent. "We have made a grave error," he said. His voice was tired, old. "For 30 years, we treated humanity as children. We gave them the worst trade terms. We denied them technology. We laughed when they asked for help. And all that time, they were building, preparing, waiting." He looked around the chamber. "We created this enemy. Now we must face the consequences." Far from Nexus Station, the human fleet was already moving. General Woojin Lee stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters. Watching the strategic map update in real time, red dots marked his ships. Blue dots marked galactic positions. The red dots were everywhere. "Phase 2 is complete," his aide reported. "The first fleet has secured the Vareth hyperlane. Third fleet controls the Nexus corridor. Fifth fleet is in position at the Merchant's Gate." Woojin nodded. "Good. Inform all ships. No attacks unless fired upon. We are not here to conquer. We are here to control." In a single week, human fleets had occupied every major trade route in the sector. They did not destroy the stations. They did not attack civilian ships. They simply sat there, waiting, their weapons silent but ready. The message was clear. The old rules no longer applied. On Earth, Admiral Taeho Park prepared for his broadcast to the galaxy. He stood in front of a simple background, the flag of United Earth, blue and green, a white circle representing the moon. "Hey, people of the galaxy," he began. I am Admiral Tahoe Park, Commander of the United Earth Defense Force. I speak to you today not as a conqueror, but as an equal across thousands of worlds. Billions of beings watched. Humanity did not seek this conflict. For 3 decades, we tried to earn your respect through patience and cooperation. We followed your rules. We signed your treaties. We accepted terms that hurt our people because we believed in time you would see us as partners. He paused. You did not. Instead, you mocked us. You let our colonies starve. You called us vermin in your highest council. Tahoe's eyes hardened. That era is over. We have terminated all treaties with the Galactic Council. Our fleets now control the major trade routes of this sector. But we do not seek to hold them forever. We seek only to be treated as equals. He leaned forward. Any species that wishes peaceful relations with humanity may contact us directly. Not through the Council. Not through the Trade Compact. Directly, we will negotiate in good faith with anyone who approaches us with respect. He straightened. To the major powers who exploited us for 30 years, your empires were built on the labor of smaller species. You kept them weak so you could stay strong. Those days are ending. The door to partnership with humanity is open. But you will walk through it as equals or not at all. The broadcast ended. Within hours, messages began arriving at Earth. Small species, ignored by the Council for centuries, reached out. The Velith, a peaceful trading people who had been taxed into poverty. The Korath, whose colonies had been stolen by the Kathrani generations ago. The unnamed species so oppressed they had been forbidden from even having a name. Ambassador Yuna Kim returned to public life. She had spent weeks in seclusion, watching, waiting. Now she sat in her office, reading message after message. A knock came at her door. It was Admiral Tahoe. Should see this, he said, handing her a tablet. Yuna read the screen. It was a message from the Velith ambassador, requesting asylum for 3 colony ships carrying 2 million refugees. They're fleeing the Kathrani, Tahoe explained. The empire is collapsing from within. Other species are rising up. The Velith were the first to run. Yuna set down the tablet. And what should we do? That is your decision, Ambassador. You speak for Earth in diplomatic matters. Yuna looked at the message for a long moment. 2 million beings, homeless, afraid, seeking protection from the very people who had once laughed at humanity. Let them come, she said. Give them food. Give them shelter. Show the galaxy what humanity truly is. Tahoe smiled slightly. Some will say we are being weak, that we should let them suffer as they let us suffer. Then some will be wrong. Yuna stood and walked to her window. Outside, the city of souls stretched toward the horizon, rebuilt and beautiful. We did not fight to become like them, Admiral. We fought to prove there was a better way. That night, Yuna broadcast her own message to the galaxy. We came to you with open hands for 30 years, she said. You slapped them away. We will not beg again, but we will not become what you are. We will not build our strength on the suffering of others. We will not laugh at the desperate or mock the weak. She paused. The door remains open for those willing to walk through it as equals. To the small species of this galaxy, the forgotten ones, the oppressed ones, you are not alone. Humanity remembers what it was like to be small. We will not forget. On Lunar Base 7, Dr. Hannah Choi watched the broadcast with her team. The young engineer who had asked her about the battle sat beside her. Did we do the right thing? He asked quietly. Hannah thought about the question. 30 years of her life had gone into Project Blackout. 30 years of secrecy, sacrifice, and hope. Oh, we survived, she finally said. Now we make sure it meant something. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. But among them, something new was beginning. The old order was falling. And in its place, humanity was building something different, something better, or at least something worth trying. 1 year had passed since the day that changed everything. The Great Hall in Geneva was filled with light. Sunlight poured through tall windows, falling on flags from 13 different species. Delegates filled the room, humans, Velith, Korath, and 10 other peoples who had answered humanity's call. They had come from across the galaxy to sign something new. Something that had never existed before. The Terran Compact Ambassador Yuna Kim stood at the podium, looking out at the assembly. 1 year ago, she had stood alone in the council chamber, mocked and humiliated. Now she stood before allies, true allies, bound not by fear, but by choice. "We gather today," she said, "not as masters and servants, not as strong and weak. We gather as equals to build something our ancestors could only dream of." She lifted the document in her hands. The new Geneva Accords, a framework for cooperation between free peoples. No species shall dominate another. No people shall be denied a voice. Trade shall be fair. Aid shall be given freely. And any member who faces aggression shall be defended by all. She signed her name. One by one, the other ambassadors came forward to add theirs. Outside the hall, billions watched the ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. On Earth, crowds filled the streets. On Velith Prime, refugees wept with joy. On a dozen other worlds, people who had lived in fear for generations saw, for the first time, a future worth believing in. The Galactic Council still existed, but its power was broken. The great empires that had ruled for millennia were fracturing. The Kathrani Empire had collapsed into civil war. Ambassador Vren had been removed from office. His name now a symbol of arrogance and failure. High Arbiter. Talos had requested a private meeting with Admiral Tejo Park. It was granted. They met in a small room, away from the ceremonies. Talos looked older than before. His blue skin had faded. His 4 eyes were tired. "I have watched your species for 30 years, he said slowly. "I thought I understood you. I was wrong." Tejo said nothing. He waited. "How did you hide your strength for so long?" Talos asked. "Our sensors, our spies, none of them detected your fleet. Your technology. How is this possible?" Tejo considered the question. "Because you never looked," he said. "You saw what you expected to see. A young species. Primitive. Weak. You never imagined we could be anything else. And your patience? 30 years of accepting insults, of following rules you had no intention of keeping. We always intended to keep them," Tejo replied. "We hoped we would never need to use what we built. But hope is not a strategy. We prepared for the worst while working for the best." Talos was silent for a moment. "You could have conquered us. With your fleet, your weapons, you could have burned the council to ashes." "Yes, why didn't you?" Tejo looked at the old Arbiter with something close to pity. "Because that is what you would have done. And we are not you." He stood. "The door is still open, Arbiter. The Compact welcomes any species willing to stand as equals. Even yours. But the days of empires are ending. The galaxy is changing. You can change with it, or you can be left behind." He walked out, leaving Talos alone with his thoughts. In the main hall, the ceremony was ending. Vice Admiral Sung-Ho Beek, promoted after the battle, stood near the back, watching quietly. His dress uniform felt strange after so many months on the bridge of a warship. Lieutenant Jian Ha found him there. "Congratulations on the promotion, Admiral," she said. Seung Ho smiled. "It does not feel real yet. A year ago, I was a captain of a ship that did not officially exist. Now I train pilots from 6 different species. The galaxy is changing fast." "Yes." He looked at the flags hanging on the walls. 13 species. 1 year ago, we stood alone. Now look at us." Jian nodded. "Do you think it will last?" It was the question everyone was asking. The Compact was new and fragile. The old powers were wounded, but not destroyed. 100 things could go wrong. "I don't know," Sung-Ho admitted. "But I know this. For the first time in human history, we are not alone. Whatever comes next, we face it together." That evening, Ambassador Yuna Kim stood on a balcony overlooking the celebration below. The streets of Geneva were filled with people, humans and aliens together, dancing, singing, celebrating a peace that had seemed impossible just 1 year ago. Admiral Tejo Park joined her. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights. "We did it," Yuna finally said. "I wasn't sure we would, but we did something," Tejo agreed. "Whether we did enough remains to be seen," Yuna laughed softly. "You know, when I walked out of that council chamber, I was not thinking about alliances or treaties. I was thinking about my grandmother. She grew up during the wars on Earth, the old wars, before unification. She used to tell me that the worst thing in life is not being hated. It is being dismissed, being treated as if you do not matter. She looked at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. The council did not hate us. They simply did not see us. We were nothing to them. Background noise. And that, in some ways, was worse than hatred. And now they see us. Una turned to face him. They may not like what they see. They may fear it. But they can no longer pretend we do not exist. Tejo nodded slowly. Do you think this new order will last? Una was quiet for a moment. Below them, a Velith child was playing with a human child, laughing together as their parents watched with smiles. I don't know if it will last forever, she said. But that is not the point. The point is that we proved it was possible. We proved that strength does not have to mean cruelty, that power does not have to mean oppression. We proved that a different path exists. She smiled. Whatever happens next, no one can take that away. The stars brightened overhead. Earth hung in the sky. Blue and green and white. A small world that had changed the galaxy. Dr. Hannah Choi watched the celebrations from her window on Lunar Base 7. Her work was finished now. Project Blackout had served its purpose. The secret fleet was no longer secret. And the weapons she had built for defense were being adapted for construction building stations. Ships of future, her communicator buzzed. It was a message from the young engineer who had asked her. So many months ago, if they had done the right thing, the message was simple. Thank you, Doctor, for everything. Hannah smiled and looked up at the Earth hanging in the lunar sky. They had survived. They had built something new. And now, for the first time in human history, the stars were truly within reach. Not as beggars, not as conquerors, as equals. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was everything.